Joining us live now is James Brown from the United States Studies Centre. James, thank you for your time. Can you tell us, what do you make of how President Trump's handled this crisis up until this point?
Well, I think the difficulty for the president is that when he's on a topic he's not familiar with, his messaging can sometimes be a bit rambling, and we saw that in some of his initial press conferences around coronavirus. One of the WHO's senior officials described his comments as rambling and incoherent, and I'd agree with that. This is not an area of strength, policy strength for the president. It's been a centrepiece, in fact, of his opponent's primary campaign so far, the state of the healthcare system in the US. And there's been some comments made by people around the president, the partisan nature of responses to the coronavirus, which haven't helped. So I think the pressure is really on him to show clear and decisive leadership. He's delegated a lot to Vice President Pence, but people will expect him to be strong and forthright and coherent on what the US is doing to get ready for what looks to be a pretty large health event that they'll be experiencing in the next few months.
And if we separate the health event out from the economic impact, this is going to be really key for him, because President Trump's real main platform is that he's the strong economic performer, that there's been growth, low unemployment under his presidency. If he's going into the election with Wall Street having record crashes, the first 15-minute hiatus of trading we've seen in 2 decades, this is really going to hurt his re-election chances.
Look, there's a few things gathering here for the president. Not only the economic impact of this health virus. I mean, people will be spending less, going out less, having less events. There'll be less production in factories, but also the potential impact of the oil tensions that are playing out at the moment. There is a possible impact for that if the oil price goes down further on US shale oil and the areas in the US where US shale oil is produced, and that's states like Kentucky, Tennessee, Alaska, Wyoming, Oklahoma, as well as traditional oil producing states like Texas and California. So you start to see a slowdown in production there. That has an impact on jobs, livelihoods, and what's happening on the markets. I mean, the market's sort of crashing through those safety barriers put in place after the GFC. So you can see the president already starting to shape a political narrative around this. He's talking about how the upside is that gasoline prices will be lower than they ever have been. But he's really in a little bit of trouble here unless he can come up with a very strong economic response and a very strong leadership response to these various factors playing into the US at the moment.
I guess in one way, though, it would play into his hands just the fact that China's also not really handling this coronavirus outbreak very well, that President Xi is really under pressure there. So when it comes to the US-China trade tensions, this could actually give him an upper hand going forward.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was talking to some colleagues and friends in the US, asking them the question, you know, how much is China featuring in this election season so far, and their answer was very little. It's not getting mentioned at rallies, it's not getting mentioned on stump speeches. So whilst within Washington there's certainly that strong bipartisan consensus about pushing back on China, for voters, whilst China is in the periphery, it's not a core issue that they're talking about that will shape their views on this election.
And how do you think this is going to impact the Democratic primaries? We've got basically 2 contenders now left, Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders. Bernie is a candidate that's calling for massive structural change, kind of revolutionary ideas, really. And when we're looking at a crisis like this, people might want to be looking at more of a steady hand.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think, you know, the time to uproot the system and turn it on its head is probably not when you're worried about the health of your close loved ones and you're worried about whether you're going to have a job in the next few months. So I think that will hurt Bernie to an extent. We've also seen some prominent endorsements for Joe Biden in the last couple of days. Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, both previous presidential candidates themselves in the primaries. Kamala Harris now increasing talk about her being selected as Joe Biden's vice presidential nominee. So at this stage, you would say the strength is with the Biden campaign over the Sanders campaign. And we've got a few more primaries coming up in the next little while that'll give us some more indicators and markers on that.